This afternoon, what we're going to talk about is wedding services. When you get called to do a wedding, and right now there's a lot of places that the different churches do not go outside of their church to marry individuals. And usually they come to us because we are open to all religions. So the first thing you do when you get a call, of course you set a meeting up with the couple. And I always hand out, now these, I always give them questions. Now some of them are just, you'll find these in your folder. It gives a better understanding of who that person is. And I ask them, of course, you do the same things. You get their full names, their birth names. You ask them if they were married before, if they have children. This is all important when you go to do a wedding. And what I do, which may be the wrong thing to do, but I'm going to share with you, I always say to the bride, who's paying for the wedding? And they'll say, well, my mom and my dad, or maybe we are. But I always say, well, this is your wedding, it should be your day. But the thing is, if your mother and father are paying for it, we got to have their input on what they want you to do. Or at least something. And I always ask the religions of each one. And sometimes they're nothing, and their parents are very Catholic, and some, So we said, well, out of the respect of all of this, let's do a prayer with one of their religions to make them all comfortable. And so I usually do that. When I did the Jewish wedding with the rabbi, I did a Christian prayer while the rabbi sang the prayer in Hebrew. So, and that was a balance. And so that's what we always have to do, respect the parents of the bride too. But remember, I tell the bride, this is your wedding. And we can discuss those choices with your mother. Usually the mother has a lot to say in both families, in both the son's and the daughter's family. So I try to respect both sides of that family. So when we ask them, what type of wedding do you really want? Because it's so important to know what they want. Some of them just want as short as possible, they'll tell you. And others will be long. I think I did a wedding one time, and I had that ceremony at home because it was, they wrote these long things that they wanted all about the world and all. And it was, I bet you, that wedding was an hour long. That whole service was like an hour long. But you know what? It was beautiful because it's what they wanted. He wrote this wonderful prayer that was like 4 pages long for the whole world, because this young man traveled all over the world. And so he remembered all the people that he needed to remember in those prayers. So it was very long, but it was a beautiful ceremony. Everybody liked it. So we have to remember we got to look at the groom too, because sometimes grooms are very sensitive and other times they just let the bride do it. But you always got to say, what are your thoughts? Because sometimes you got to pull them out, But I always ask, how long do you want this to last? And what type of service do you want? Do you want it intimate? Do you want it warm and friendly? That you want to cherish it in your heart? Or you want the traditional, the very formal, blah, 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 blah? And, or you want it real short? Or you want it real sacred, real holy? And a lot of people, they'll tell you what they want. A lot of the people now, they want something light and up, And they really do. And they want something mystical in it, I find. They want something mystical that they can remember. So you always put a little bit of magic in that wedding somehow. And you can do it. When you open up to them, you can do it. And also the hardest part is to do if you have one of these very staunch, solemn weddings. And what do I mean by that? Well, I did a wedding that was very stiff. All military people, plus they're Scottish, they're all in kilts. And it was very, very, no room for, it had to be boom, boom, boom. And so that was like the strangest one I ever did. But I enjoyed it. But of course, you have to just be very nice with some of these brides can be Gonzalez brides, let me tell you. And the mothers can be twice as hard, as some of you know. But the best thing that I like to do is try to get them together to find out, well, let's do it your way. This is, what do you want? And then we can kind of soften up with the parents. But are there any rituals that you wanted included? Now, some people, if their grandparents die early, or if their mother died or their father died, I always offer a candle for them if they want it, an optional that I will light a candle, a silent moment as I light a candle for those that the bride or groom wish. We invite them here to come in spirit. And I'm not afraid to say that because I tell them what I do. And so sometimes you want something that's very wonderful, like with their vows. I like when they do their own vows, because when they do their own vows, it's so exciting. Example, I did the broadcasters from Wilkes-Barre. He was a photographer for the newspaper, the Pocono, whatever it is up there, and she was a newscaster for the radio station there. But anyway, I loved it. It brought the house down. It was like one of those whippy ones, and they were up and they were young and they were full of life. And when she did her vows, she said, "And I will love you when you go hunting, and I will love you when you fish, and I will love," and she did all of these things. Because he was, and I guess this was talked about before, because when I talk to them, I say, talk about your differences. If he wants to go hunting, what are his likes, what he likes to do, and what do you like to do? You might not like each other's things, but you got to accept it. Don't marry the guy if you know he's going to go hunting for a week, and you can't accept that, because that starts problems right in the beginning. So, and this is what, I just love that everybody thought this was really good. So sometimes they get lighthearted with it, and it's a fun thing. And other times it's completely different. Every wedding is unique, and we got to remember that. Every bride is different. Every groom is different. A strict thing that I have, and I'm not afraid to tell them, I pull the men together. But now I found out I got to do that to the women too. No drinking the day of the wedding. I don't care what you do afterward, but not here. And but I understand the girls have a good time now before they come down there, and I was so naive about that. Usually when they know I'm coming, they might hide their bottles for years, but now I see they're right up there. But it's a new generation again, see? But so why do we do that? Let me tell you, legally you should do it, for the simple reason is, supposing they don't get along after 2 weeks. That man can go and say to the judge or whoever, you know what, I was married under the influence. And actually, they can sue you. They can sue you. So that's why I always say right up front. Because we had many things that happened already that we were naive in. We had a best man fall right here on the floor. And I tell them all now, don't drink. We did. The guy fell flat. Lloyd said, what do you want me to do? They said, go on. We just went right on with the wedding. No one ran to his rescue because he was drunk. We also had a groom that we had to sober up before we married him. Remember that, Nancy? Yes. And so we learn from those experiences. You learn from all of this. So always ask them if sometimes they don't even want prayers. You do know that. They want nothing. They don't want prayers. They don't want this, and they don't want, they don't want anything religious. They don't. So what you do is try to get something romantic, something that will be comfortable for both of them. But I always, regardless, I always give them a blessing because I think that's part of me. And you have the right also to say, well, I don't know if I can marry you. I have a problem with tying people up. The hand fasting. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with it at all. Because that to me looks like bondage. And this is my own personal thing. So I would rather say someone else who's comfortable with it, I would give that wedding away. And this is how I am, because you can have your choices. But we have to remember, it's always study your couple first, because that's very important. I also give them many options. And always be truthful. Always be truthful about yourself, who you are. Don't misrepresent yourself. And another thing, every culture is different. If you do weddings of different cultures, be prepared to wait. Be prepared to wait. Be prepared for anything that happens. A woman called me from New Jersey. Would I take this wedding for her because she broke her leg or something? I said, sure. So she said, it's a Spanish wedding, and blah, 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 and she described it, and she sent me the whole wedding, what she had planned with them and all. And I said, this is fine. Is there a rehearsal? I happen to like a rehearsal if you have an irresponsible wedding coordinator. And this particular place had an irresponsible wedding coordinator. So you couldn't get anything with her. And if they were there, they must have done their own thing. But they said, no, they didn't want a rehearsal. Then she said, no, they didn't want a rehearsal. Well, when I get there, I'm trying to talk to the wedding coordinator, and she's so busy, she just fluffed me off. And she had to make another sale. Couldn't find the bride. Couldn't find anybody that was related to this wedding. So that's why I say always go early. Then I see this young man in a white suit. I thought, well, he got to be the groom. So I went up and I introduced myself, and he said, oh, I'm so glad we could have someone do this for us, because their former girl, minister, broke her leg. So I said, I'm very happy to do it for you. And in a case like that, when you don't get your payment, okay, I said to the young man, I said, would you want to take care of the fees now, before the wedding? Because after the wedding, I said, it gets very chaotic. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. I don't have anything with me. And I went, oh, okay. So we did the whole wedding. It was very, very chaos. No one knew what they were doing. This is a simple thing that they did that I never understood, but it might be a culture thing. I saw in the reading that the minister had sent me that they wanted a bowl of water, and everybody from the congregation was going to come up we're going to put a flower in this water. I didn't understand it. I couldn't explain it. So of course I called it flower blessing. And one by one they come out, pulled the flour out of these things and threw it in. But there was nothing prepared. So I went to the waitress and I said, please, I need to have water down there. Where are the flowers? So you always got to be there and prepare, get your stuff ready, because sometimes it's just not done for you. Then you go to other places and their coordinators are wonderful. You wouldn't even have to be at a rehearsal, because you just step aside and they tell you what to do, and that's great. That's really nice. So you always got to be prepared for a wedding, so always go earlier, even though you have to wait sometimes. But then after the service, when everything was done, like I said, it was like they pushed all these people out on this little pier, and always make sure you have sunglasses because the sun might be glaring in your eyes, and you have to wear them. So you always got to be prepared with those things when you have weddings that you're not really familiar with, that you never talk to the people, because that's a long shot. That's a long shot. And I always like to have those weddings, like really, I don't like to be nervous at those weddings, because that energy goes into the couple. And so what I did is, after the service, when I said, I looked at the bride's mother and I said, I need to have my fees paid now. Oh, she said, we must have forgot about that. She went and called all these men together. And it's embarrassing. I was very embarrassed. All these men together, and they all reach in their pocket, and they're counting out this money, and I'm going, this is so embarrassing. I'm not used to this. You see what I'm saying? But evidently, all of this woman's weddings were like this. They were always all neurotic people. And you know what, you know what I mean, like they're just not, I don't know if they just don't care. Plus the fact they were disrespectful because they came an hour late. You know, the groom was there, but the bride was nowhere to be found in the whole hotel. So that stuff is hard to do when you do a wedding. So that's why it's best to make sure you interview both of them. And sometimes mama comes along, if they're young, and sometimes they have children. And when they have children, I try to incorporate the children in the ceremony. And I usually do that with a candle, and I have the bride and groom light the candle together. And then the children come up and they all light the candle together to make them unified as a family. And that works out very well, because then you already lit the flame for that child in that family. So you want to always make them a part of it, or her a part of it. And I like to do that with the flower. Also, I put in the order of the service, that this is just a guideline, because everybody might have their own, what they want you to do, but you give them a guideline. I also do a blessing of the hands. I don't know if anybody has that in here. I don't think it's in here, but I'll gladly share that with you, where I bless their hands, and that's also beautiful. And sometimes I introduce a wine ceremony. And I found that out with a Jewish wedding, and I kind of liked it, where they drink the wine together. Now, they don't stomp the glass, but they drink the wine together. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And it depends on what their liking is. But anyway, it's beautiful. And the wine ceremony is, as you share this cup of wine from one cup, so may you, under God's guidance, draw contentment, comfort, and strength from the cup of life. May you find life's joys heightened, its bitterness sweetened, and all things hollow by true companionship and love. Now that's part of, and I just kind of like that. Now some people don't want it, because sometimes it reminds them of a communion. And then we do the unity candle. Most of the time the unity candle is done. Some of them want all of it, and that's really nice. You know, I really like all that. And some of them do the unity candle. If you ever have an outside wedding, please frown from a unity candle being outside. Simply because 95% of the time, all depends where you are and where you're doing it. If it's not a hot day and steady, it's kind of blow out, then you have all these people go in the background, you know. And they do. I mean, they like to, you know, like these old people believe in superstition. And so what I do a lot of times, and I tell the couple ahead of time, I will gladly do the candle after your first dance in your reception, if that's what you truly want, rather than have it go out, or we can do a sand ceremony. Some of them want the sand, they want the wine, they want everything. And I like it, because it doesn't bother me. So what they do after the first dance, when they're introduced at their reception, their candles are set, the candle is set right in the front where they are. And they come right after the dance up, and we do the candle ritual. And then I walk out this way, and they greet their other guests coming in. So it's really, really nice, and it's still personal for them. So that's what I do. But weddings are so different. You can do anything you want. Also, I give the gift for a rose. I give the rose to them, and I have them smell the rose. I have them hold the rose. And 95% of the time, men cry from this. And I don't know if it's part of me that want to bring the feelings out of the man. But anyway, I talk to them about the rose. And I just let the words flow, like what the rose represents. Look deep in the rose, and now look in each other's eyes. You see what the creation in that rose? Now look at your creation. And I go on and on about the rose, the green stems. I also let the thorns on the rose, not all of them, but I have them slide their finger up the stem. See how nice and smooth that is? Then you come to a thorn. And sometimes we have, and I talked to him about that thorn, that sometimes we have thorns in our marriages, obstacles, that we can let them stick us, or we can just go around it and forgive it and move on. And so then we talk about the prosperity of the leaves. I try to get a rose that has a lot of leaves on, because I always say, and the green represents all the prosperity in your life, and the health and happiness, and how the rose buds. And then I tell them now, the rose can be a bond for the two of you. It doesn't have to be a rose just when you're angry at each other or an anniversary. It could be any time you just think of that person. To bring a rose and place it there. And I say every time, it makes a good feeling. It makes a good feeling. There's another tradition that they have that's, I think it's Hindu, which sometimes would be good to introduce. And I think at weddings it's a good thing to do it now, because you don't really have to say where it comes from, but they have a little bell, and they ring this little bell at the wedding when the vows are done, because it's all love and light. And then they put the bell aside, but then they tell the couple, they present the bell to the couple, and they say, now every time there's a disagreement or a misunderstanding, one of you ring the bell, and that bell will remind you of this very day that you took your vows of love for each other. That is nice. That is nice. Now, if they want it, that's fine, But then, of course, you got to provide the bell, But also, what I do, this is very important. See this white book? They sell it at Staples, and you can pull all these things out here, and you keep it very plain, very open, and it's a book. See this? It's the whole marriage service, right in this book. Sometimes the couple asks for the book, and you give it to them. And see what I do? Then I put their program in the back here. If they send me a picture, I have the picture with all of that. See, this happens to be in Tannersville. So, and I always save that. And I put them all together. I use the same book. I just pull out the things and clip them together and save them, because then you kind of remember. Will you remember any of these people? I did so many memories. I couldn't remember. But some of them stand out that you'll always remember. Then I usually give them a marriage certificate. Where do you get these? You get these at Hackman's. You can send away for them. I'm not really, some of them. See, there's different ones like this. And they're like $1.58, sometimes $1. Matter of fact, you can get one and you can print your own. And I usually do one like that. When it comes to filling out the end of the wedding, you have a marriage license. So here's a nice one that I just picked up. That's different. When you fill out the marriage license, where I had it here, anybody who does a first wedding can please call me because I can walk you through it, because sometimes everyone is different. Every county is different. Put it here. I think I gave you a part of it. You have 3 parts to your license. The first part is telling you that, like if their names, and sometimes, this one happened to be, but I don't think they do this anymore. This is since 2002, and this is in Northampton County. They still put on married, now divorced. Not all counties do that anymore. But this is the part that you keep. This is a copy of what you would send back in and you keep. Part of it, it'll tell you very clearly. The top part, I think you send in. The middle part is the license. And this is the part you keep in your file. Okay? Because this is where they signed it and said, yes, they got the license, that's for you. But it's very simple to fill out. You just follow what the top says going all the way down, and you sign it. This has to be into every courthouse within 10 days. 10 days? If not 10 days, they can fine you. Now, this is another experience that I had. Make sure you send this marriage license that they signed for it at the courthouse. And I'll tell you why. I did a marriage for this man and woman that were from California, that his family was in Philadelphia. So they visited Philadelphia, it's where his address was, and they got the marriage license there, and everything was fine. When I sent this part of the marriage license in, he was being deported to Iraq. And this marriage license did not get to the courthouse when the service called to check on it. And it was like 20 days later and it still wasn't there. So now I send them, they have to sign it. And it might cost you, what, $2 or something, but send it that they signed for it and that you know it can get there. So it's worth it. Yes.
Do I understand you to mean that you will send it certified?
Certified.
So the receiver signs?
Yes.
All right.
So they sign it. And then you will get a part back saying that you did your part, that it was correct.
There's 2 parts to it. You want the return thing also.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a total, I think it's 554 is the last number of times I said it.
I don't know. I don't remember what it is. But they'll tell you. But so they sign for it, then you get that slip. Okay, Sylvia?
What I always do though also is when I receive that back from the courthouse, I will email the couple and let them know that the courthouse received it.
All right, this isn't really a logistical question, but will you help me if I get asked to do a wedding?
I will stand by you.
Okay, great.
I'll coach you all the way. I've coached many ministers through it. Because that's the important part. That's what we're here for, to help you be the best you can be. And you know my services. I married Sylvia's daughter, and everything falls in place just really nice, you know. And you got to just remain calm, and it all works out. It's just that you can't let anything get you rattled that day, because you're going to maybe have a lot of people that are nervous. Usually the brides are very nervous. And what I try to do is I try to go in to see the bride before, because I'm with the groom, but I try to go in to see the bride and the mother before she gets dressed. That's when I find out, oh, they're having this party here. But normally, and I always walk in with the groom. Not everybody does that, but I do it because that groom is just as important as the bride. You know, most churches let them come out one